feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Wednesday afternoon. It's July 2nd. I've got Britt Robson here with me to kind of wade through what the Wolves have done, what they still might be able to do the rest of free agency, along with talking about the rest of the NBA's free agency period through I guess we're 2 days into free agency thus far. I thought the first real intersection between NBA free agency at large and what the Wolves have done thus far was actually yesterday, Britt, when Miles Turner signed with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yep.
And Jakob Poeltl re-signed or signed an extension with Toronto. You know, two other bigs like Nas and Julius, who are definitely not $40 million a year max players, but also definitely not mid-level exception guys. I was kind of thinking about the whole free agency period of what this, might look like. I've got the specific contract details and stuff like that for Turner and Poeltl. But how did you feel about Nas's 5/125 he signed for, the 3/100 Randle signed for, compared to what Miles Turner signed for, which was 4/107, and then Jakob Poeltl signed the extension. He's at like 5/124 if you look at it all together.
Right.
Kind of the same as Nas. Does that shift your opinion at all? I don't think you thought Nas and Julius were big overpays in the first place, but within that context, how are you thinking about where the Wolves are with their big signings?
I actually think that they worked hard to create harmony in the locker room. I think that what this shows is that the market, if they wanted to screw down on the market, they might have been able to.
Right.
They didn't want to do that. It was very clear from the beginning. Tim Conley is promoted good character, and that works two ways. I mean, if you're screwing your players who have high character, they're not going to stick around.
Right.
And so I thought both numbers were fair. I thought they were both, once I really took a hard look at the market, I originally had Nas as a bigger number. And then the harder I looked at the market, the more I realized that wasn't so. They're both on the high end of an acceptable margin, I think. And I think that that's a really good place for the Wolves to be, provided they don't need that extra salary in there, that 15th guy. And, if they needed 9 instead of 5, and we need to throw Joe Ingles in there too, because that was, that's money, I mean,
it's a minimum. There were going to have to be a minimum on a guy, no matter what. It's more like the opportunity cost of a roster spot.
Yeah,
I think,
but it's a 12-year veterin minimum.
Yeah, but it only counts as $2.2 million against the cap.
Oh, does it?
Even though
it
pops on
I saw 360.
Yeah,
I winced. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Okay.
Weird, convoluted sort of thing. If you sign a minimum contract, it's more, if you have more years of experience that you get paid.
Right.
The cap hit is that of a normal, of a 2-year player.
So the 1.4 extra is off the books.
Is actually paid for by the NBA.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly how or why it works that way. I think that
makes me feel a lot better about it.
Yeah. It's literally, I mean, but I think some people are frustrated with, it being the opportunity cost of losing a roster spot. And I think I could make that argument too, try and sign another Josh Minot or something like that to a non-guaranteed minimum. They could have gone for youth with that final roster spot. But to your initial point, they went with continuity, veteran leadership, vibes, all of those sort of things. And what Ingles might lack at 38 years old in basketball skills,
everybody, to the media especially, he goes out of his way to be caustic, jokey, the kind of the Weisenheimer guy all the time. But there's clearly some things, he's really good for Rudy. I see him talk to Ant. He isn't afraid to give his opinion to anybody, whether they're media, star, scrub. But apparently what comes out of his mouth is really well received in that locker room, because I hear nothing. That one time where his son was involved in getting him a start, to have his son see him play, and some other things you hear about Joe Ingles. Nothing but positive in the locker room from him. So, and that's not easy to do. I mean, it's a hard role when you're really the 14th or 15th guy on the roster. If you're playing, something's wrong. And that was different than the expectation coming in. Some of it was the trade, that brought DDV in and Randle in. But I also think, he wasn't in good shape through most of the season. He was hurt early, didn't have a really good opportunity to get himself into real playing shape. Did not play well when he was on the court. But is a locker room guy. And if you can afford it, and Tim Conley thinks you can, then we don't know what goes on in there, and so you got to trust the people running the show and the people in that room. The fact that the Wolves have had a really harmonious team for the last 3 or 4 years, I think is kind of underrated.
So that ties into like the context of which the Wolves are moving through this regular season or this offseason of being a kind of run it back team. Ingles is the least among them in terms
but actually
of
one of the more signature run it backs.
Yeah,
if you think about
right.
It
kind of
nobody had to re-sign Joe Ingles.
True.
It was a gesture, and I'm really glad it was a 2.2 cap hit gesture, quite frankly.
Right.
Which is minimum salary. So but yeah, I think Nas is comfortable with what he has right now. And I think if he stays here for the entire contract, he'll be an 11-year veteran with the same team.
Right.
He's the senior member in terms of time spent on the team. Julius Randle wanted the ratification. It's one thing to praise him up and down. It's another thing to pay him. They paid him. They paid him at least market rate, maybe a little more than market rate. Who knows? But I also think it's one of those situations. We've got two guys who kind of have to share minutes and also have kind of morphing roles depending on how Rudy waxes and wanes on this team next year. You want flexibility, you want amiability, you want a desire to perform whatever role Chris Finch and Tim Conley think is the dominant role for you without a lot of muss and fuss. And I think that extra money is a little bit of vigorish that maybe gets you that goodwill. And if that's true, and consistency and continuity and now familiarity are in vogue, is better for this team next year, then that's money well spent.
Yeah, and I don't I was looking through it this morning. I'm not sure if Julius Randle is outside of his market range. I was just going through like the power forwards.
It's right in there, right.
I don't know. Listen to this. Okay, so I was looking at the power forward deals, and in a class above Julius Randle is Lauri Markkanen. He's on a first year of a 4-year, $196 million deal. That's $46 million next season.
Yes.
Siakam, year 2 of a 4-year, $189 million year, $45.5 million next season. Domantas Sabonis is in year 2 of a 4-year, $186 million deal. That's $43 million this season. And we would say, and I think it'd be fair to say that all 3 of those players in the power forward market are above Randle, but that's for 150% of Randle's salary.
True.
This season, Randle is going to be at 31 next season, which is more in the Jeremy Grant, Tobias Harris, that sort of range. Grant is on a 5-year, $160 million deal. He's making $32 million this season. Tobias Harris signed a 2-year, $52 million deal. He's making $27 million this season. Then, there's like John Collins is at $27 million this coming year. Draymond Green, $26 million. And I know he's above these guys. Aaron Gordon at 23, Kyle Kuzma at 22. But it's weird. The Julius Randle range is basically that 30 million number with power forwards is basically just him, Jeremy Grant, Tobias Harris, and then maybe Nas if you throw Nas into that group too.
Well, and then you have Julius Randle, the player, which is, for understandable reasons, a great divergence of opinion. Yeah. He has been the man on the team. He was, for the Knicks for a while, he was the guy who brought them back. Had to take a back seat. He had to change his role this year. He was not a good defender until the second half of this season, quite frankly. There's big flaws in his resume, but as somebody who ripped him for most of the season and grudgingly admitted that he was worth the deal, worth the cat trade, was one of the things that was good about the cat trade rather than a necessary salary that had to be taken. I'm prepared to say that as I just said, a paid Julius Randle for the next 3 years, who is willing to be, again, amenable to what happens, is a positive and worth those dollars. But I don't think if he had gotten 35 or 40, I wouldn't have liked that deal.
Yeah, no, and I think that would have been fair. What I actually had written down here was wanting to ask you about how your position has moved on Randle, because you were not a proponent of the move at the. Well, maybe that's not true. You were a proponent. I don't know. I'm speaking for you, but you were a proponent of the move and understanding the flexibility that it was going to create. But you wanted Naz Reid to start day one.
I wanted Naz Reid to start right up until that argument became blatantly wrong. You know. And
not that long ago.
Exactly. But also, kind of in my defense, I think that Naz would have had a better year if he had been the starter. He and Rudy famously, played really good defense together. But you got to include Randle, who was also then good. Naz gave up a little bit of cachet so that Julius Randle could flourish. And I think that counts. Again, that's part of the money we're talking about. But also, I mean, we're left with a taste of bittersweetness in the playoffs, some real sweetness. Both of them had good playoff moments. Both of them, I thought Naz began to prove himself in the playoffs until the defense in the last, the 5 games against OKC and even part of, the series against Golden State. And Randle, obviously great in the first 2 series, not great at all. Got stuck ball hogging and
both of them just turned it over whenever they tried to do anything.
Exactly.
So it's, I think an important piece of it, though, in you or anybody else's Randle position, is factoring in what the contract was when he came in.
Right.
There was last year he made like 30,
right,
and then had the player option for 31. So we, at the time of the trade, all we knew how to think about it as was that it's like 2 years of Julius Randle at $60 million.
Right.
And now it is reframed into, okay, that player option, he didn't technically opt into it, but they kept it at that same number, 31 for next season. Or we'll see where that comes in finality. I think they're trying to leave a little bit of flexibility and stuff to, based on other moves. But basically what Julius Randle did was sign a 2-year, $70 million extension, even though it wasn't an extension, but you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Added on $69 million there for the next 2 years. And I think there's 2 ways to look at that. There's me looking at Jeremy Grant and Tobias Harris on this list right now and being like, well, better than them. But then the other side of it is now you are not stuck with this fit, but you need to play this Julius Randle way that impacts your entire offense, so long as he's on your roster for these next 2 years. And there's something that's not a smooth fit to that. I think that doesn't mean, I don't think that makes the contract outright wrong, because I don't know what the alternative was necessarily, but you do incur some risk with Randle here going forward, while also potentially incurring some value of a near all-star caliber power forward on a Jeremy Grant deal.
And here's another glass half full perspective that I grudgingly adopted as we went along. It took a full season, obviously injury truncated season, for Finch to get Cat and Rudy in a place where they were really synergistic. It took him about a half a season, obviously a little fewer time lost to injury, but to get Randle and Rudy and the team on the same page. I expect they're paying for a continuity dividend this coming season, and I expect it because that's the strength of this Conley-Finch tandem, is that they say, no, we can make this work. And everybody goes, come on, we've seen it. You can't. And then they slowly but surely they do.
Yeah.
And so I'm expecting Randle, Reid, and Rudy to all have a better idea of what they're doing, and also have that be a better rotation and it's going to be a more productive training camp. Randle didn't play at all last training camp.
Just like Cat the year before that.
And we all remember the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season where that starting five was terrible. They were terrible. They had no spacing. They had no shooting.
Right.
And that starting five at the end of the season was really pretty good. And so you have that to move from, and you have the continuity. You have the taste of another conference finals decisive defeat, which is a pretty good place to be motivationally. You've gotten this far, and yet you've been squished twice. So what can I do to get that extra, game or two in those finals? It's on the table there, and that applies to Finch. That applies to Conley. But it certainly applies to guys like Rudy and, for that matter, Mike Conley and Ant most particularly.
Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. And if you are staying in town this week, there's plenty going on over at Falling Knife. Tonight, Wednesday night, they have Trivia Mafia from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. Then on Thursday night, the Mystics play the Lynx. That will be on the projection screens and playing through the speakers in the tap room. There will also be the Initials game going on from 7:30 to 9:30 on Thursday night. Friday night, they will be, or Friday for the 4th of July, they will be open, but just from noon to 6 p.m. So like I've been saying, head over there. Maybe before you go to the fireworks or something like that. Then also Saturday and Sunday, Lynx game Saturday night, and then Sunday night at 5 p.m. they will have Trivia Mafia in-house doing a baseball themed trivia. So if any of that whets your appetite, head over to Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast for some trivia, great beer, and some Lynx games this week. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. You can see that up here on my screen. There we go. Put it up there. PrizePicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Even with the NBA season over, there is still plenty of ways to play over at Prize Picks this holiday weekend. WNBA, MLB, soccer, tennis, golf. They have that 4th of July hot dog eating contest. You can do more or less hot dogs eaten on there. All you need to do to put together a Prize Picks lineup is put 2 or more picks in your lineup to win. Make sure to check the promotions tab whenever you're putting together a lineup. There's almost always something going on there. And there certainly will be on the 4th of July for Flex Friday, when you can make every Friday a $35 flex lineup that will be protected if it doesn't lose, or if it does lose. So long as you opt into that on the promotions tab, you will have that protected play. No brainer on Fridays if you're playing Prize Picks. If you do not yet have a Prize Picks account, all you have to do is put in the promo code Dane when you sign up, and you will receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app using promo code Dane when you create your account. I think related to the idea of continuity with the 3 bigs all back on the team is the idea is that enough at the center, at the bigs position between the 3 of them. The 4th big last year was Luka Garza,
right.
In a pinch, he's gone. Jaden McDaniels played a good amount of 4 when there was injury, when Gobert and Randle were hurt.
And is
there.
a stealthy big.
Yeah, he's
I
big.
mean, when he is a 4 and not a wing stopper, he's one of the best box out rebounders on the team, and is
the rebounding light switch is on, and the rim protection light switch is on when he.
Yeah. And that, that's a really good thing to have a parallel track on.
Right.
Jaden is wing stopper, Jaden is power forward. I would exercise both this coming season, and I would continue throughout his career to do that, because he is more than the sum of his parts, because there's a lot of parts, but you don't get people who are power forwards and wing stoppers in the same body who are that good at it very often. And I think he's going to get a lot better at being a big.
Right.
And so partly because there's scoring involved and there's more offense involved. If he's not on that wing stopper role, he has more energy and he's more featured. So I believe that will happen. But to your point about another big, if they do add a 15th spot,
that's where I was going.
The big or the point is really going to indicate where we're at. I mean, there's some interesting, there's always a, like we like Drew Eubanks, for example.
Actually, when I saw that one yesterday, I was like, "Ooh, but that's what we're talking about. That's the type of."
And there's always a Plumlee sticking around somewhere. A rim running Plumlee would actually not be a bad thing on this team,
right? Well, and so that's what I mean. Jason and I were kind of talking about this yesterday, where I get what people are talking about with the point guard. I mean, you have a 38-year-old and a 20-year-old. That's weird as your two point guard.
And I think you can't ignore DDV's part in this. I think he will play.
But you also can't ignore the absence of Nikhil, who played more point guard than.
But I think he will get a third of the. I think DiVincenzo will get a third of the point guard minutes.
Do you like him there though? I mean, aren't you getting, if he's an 84 overall at shooting guard, isn't he a 76 overall at point guard?
Yes. But I'll take it.
Right.
I'll take 76 for a third of the minutes.
Sure. I also think that Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle function as the quote unquote point guard a lot too.
You see that, with Andrew Nebhard, or people besides Shea, J-Dub.
Sure.
J-Dub and Randall, theoretically, you could say are somewhat comparable. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there is a model for that out there.
And it isn't to say that the point guard thing isn't another model that would be reasonable to look at for the Wolves, and having a third guy. I brought up like Monte Morris, like a for sure minimum contract point guard player. That model makes some sense too. What I'm doing is comparing and contrasting it against, in this vacuum of minimum point guard or minimum center, or maybe taxpayer mid-level $5 million point guard, or $5 million center. And I think the Jaden factor, we didn't talk about that as much yesterday too. If Jaden wasn't there, I'd be like, okay, big is kind of a need. You got to have a fourth big, but maybe that's just Jaden.
I got an interesting name. When I look at the free agents, it always pops to me. Dante Exum. I'd take him for the 5'7".
Yeah. I thought about him too.
And he's combo guard. He has some really nice passing instincts. Next to Ann, I can see him. He's a floor spacer, but he can also go off the bounce.
It's actually a very similar Nikhil story with him. Couldn't shoot it all. He left. Yeah. I mean, but he did. Then he shot it. He's been injured a lot, I think, in the last 12 months.
Injury is one of the problems. And you look at that body and you kind of understand that he's this hulking guy who plays hard and a position where he has to move a lot. But I really like him. And, I'd be overjoyed if they use their, then they'd be really kind of constricting themselves. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to be comfortable with that. But if they decided they wanted to be right up against it, that would be the way I'd go.
Yeah. If you want to incur that quote unquote burden of being, because I think it's like if they gave somebody,
they're over the cap.
Yeah, for real.
Right.
And people might go, well, you'd have a full roster. Like, why are you going to sneeze? But like sneezes happen over the course of the year. A buyout guy, somebody gets hurt and replacing them. Then if you are basically right up against it, your only way outside of shedding salary and a salary dump would be like whoever your two-way guys are coming up, and one of them, again, miraculously being Jalen Clark.
Right. Exactly.
And I think two of them are going to be Rocco Zikarsky and Edwards, the other big five, Jesse Edwards, the other big. I mean, it could be Bones too, not in a two-way, but that could be a point guard
that's
there.
The problem is, I think Bones is out of two-way eligibility.
But he could be the minimum.
I know.
He could be the Monte Morris.
Yeah, I've always disliked. I mean, he's not a point guard. The guy is a shooter, And every time I see him try to be a point guard, I just say, he's just pretending so he can find ways to shoot.
But if you bottled what he was that one good year in Denver and made him the deep bench out of the rotation third point guard, like that would be great. Like that I mean, in the context of a 14, 15
I get what you're saying.
Player.
It strikes me as a return of Jalen Noel.
Sure. But those are the bets you take
at
that number there. I don't know how I feel exactly about it one way or the other. I think probably why I'm leaning towards big is it just feels like there's more ways to paper over if something were to happen at the handler positions. You do a little bit more point ant if Mike Conley misses 3 weeks. Again, this isn't an ideal situation,
I agree.
but there's some ways to paper over it. What if 33-year-old Rudy Gobert is out for a month?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
we saw that. They were 5-8.
Yeah.
I mean, Gobert and Randle. Gobert missed the entire month of February. It was really interesting when I looked it up. I mean, he played like the last day of January and the first day of March.
Right.
And they were 5-8 in that month. And it was fun to watch. First of all, it was a rugged schedule. So they played some tough teams, and some of that was where that 5-8 was. Nas at the center, Jaden at the 4, although
Randle and DiVincenzo were both
5.
Yeah.
And they also had Jalen Clark get big minutes and TJ Shannon get big minutes. And it was an opportunity to say, hey, there's some talent here. But it was the mindset of a play-in team. It was not the mindset of a championship team. And that play-in mindset is fun when you're seeing new guys and, it's like the backup quarterback
but a cautionary tale.
Yeah, exactly. And that's finally getting around to the reason I brought it up is because you were talking about what happens, if that happens. And what happens is play-in mindset 5-8, unless you can fill that, role with somebody who really, really works. And also, so we don't get too down about it, because I'm a big believer in continuity. And I do think that Jalen Clark and TJ Shannon are going to get better. I am also fine with almost running it back the way it is and no more signings. But for that to happen, I really do believe that Ant is going to have to take a leap and that Dillingham is going to have to take a leap. And I am not really confident of both of those things happening. I'm moderately confident of one of those things happening, but I don't know which one it would be.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's where continuity breaks from last season to this season. Nickeil Alexander-Walker out. He's on the Atlanta Hawks.
Yep.
And the Wolves have that glut of young players who are, quote unquote, ready to fill that role. They could probably best fill that role in the aggregate, all three of them together, which isn't, you can't do that. You can't play all three of them at one time there, but that's the change to continuity. And I like if continuity is in fact as important as you're implying there, as Conley has implied there, it's helpful that the players that are replacing Nickeil Alexander-Walker are players who have been in the system before, and they have continuity in understanding the system, the roster, how Ant plays, whatever. Like we saw Jalen Clark fit that.
Exactly.
Fit in when given that opportunity. Terrence Shannon Jr. is bigger in like every sense of the word, and takes up just probably more usage, more space, does more things on the floor in a good way. And then there's Rob there too. I'm fascinated to see game one of the season, if this is the roster, how Finch approaches that exactly. But a case for not bringing somebody else in and maybe not using that taxpayer mid-level exception and pushing yourself all the way up against that second apron is the idea that the player that would be coming in does not have the continuity, is probably a similar caliber of player to Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr., because we're talking about near minimum. It might be a sexier name, but I don't think we know that you go get a Dante Exum
Right.
and it's going to be any better, than Jalen Clark or Terrence Shannon Jr. So I don't know. I have optimism there. I was long on the position of I don't think you just need to move on, choose that Nickeil is the player that you have to move on from just because he's the unrestricted free agent.
I agree with
there
that.
was other different ways to do it, but they have replacements in place behind him, even if not perfect fits.
And you can argue or say, I prefer this, but if you follow the team the way we follow the team, we know that Chris Finch would not have been happy to lose Julius Randle. And we know that Tim Conley will not be happy if Rob Dillingham is sidelined again the way he was last year. I mean, these are just things that these guys believe in. And they're smart people who have gotten this team where they are right now. And so, yeah, you have to take it on faith to some extent. Randall, less so than Dillingham. You really have to. Rob Dillingham still has had a couple of marvelous games and a couple of decent, credible games, and maybe at least as many of those games combined where he was ineffective and targeted defensively. And I just, we talk about slow bigs in the modern NBA of like, everybody scratching for, the way Indiana and OKC especially played in the finals, that kind of marauding defense and whatever. And Rob Dillingham doesn't have the size to make that work. Tyus Jones was in a very similar position when he came to this team and worked really hard on his body and slowly but surely got better. But it hurts his ceiling, and it's going to hurt Rob Dillingham's ceiling, in my opinion. I just think that in the modern NBA, it's got to be switchable. And we talk about bigs, switchable bigs, and how you need a big who can be switchable. Well, if you're really small, switchability is also an issue, and that doesn't get talked about as much.
Right. And that is the theoretical collision of the Finch-Conley view on Dillingham. Conley is the one who invested a 2031 unprotected first-round pick to go get Rob Dillingham.
And absolutely gushed about him afterwards.
Absolutely, yes. And they still really
do. They really believe in him.
That hasn't moved, but
and
obviously
I take some faith in that because Tim Conley has proven to be a pretty adept guy at judging talent. In fact, it's probably the thing I like most about Dillingham is how firmly Conley is in his corner.
Right. But it collides with obviously Finch's preferences and how much, and that was illustrated by how little he played Rob Dillingham last year for the exact reasons I'm pretty sure that you laid out about, defensive shortcomings that he had at 19 years old at that size. I think an interesting third one I would enter into that conversation. I think actually both Conley and Finch are aligned on, though the fan base might not be, is Mike Conley. And I think there is not a collision in belief in Mike Conley in the Tim Conley silo or the Chris Finch silo, which I think sort of sets the pretext of creating this whole roster for this season. Because I'm saying leaning towards center over point guard for the last spot on the roster, given that my expectation of how Tim Conley and Chris Finch are going to approach Mike Conley, my expectation is he will be the starting point guard next season or still be playing a large role for this team. So that's a weird, it's a weird thing to talk about because I hear what, fans are saying and stuff like that. And there's frustration with Conley, and some of that deserved, certainly, from he struggled in that Thunder series. He struggled in the Dallas Western Conference Finals a year ago, injuries, some there, but that's part of the cake with Mike Conley. But isn't it just your expectation that they're just going to lean on Mike Conley again? And that's why they haven't done anything else to address the position.
And I do want to clarify, we say this about Gobert a lot. His mistakes are loud, his virtues are quiet. Mike Conley's mistakes are becoming louder. He's got two problems. He's got the Dillingham problem of switchability and size.
Just new. That's like developed to be a problem over the last.
It really is
12 months.
A 37-year-old body.
Yeah.
You know, is really what it comes down to. I mean, that Amen Thompson game will forever be in my mind.
But will also be in my mind is 2 years ago when they would play the Thunder, Conley would guard Shea.
I know, exactly.
You know, and he just had it.
But I think that, and the other thing that I would say is a pretty loud flaw that is also relatively new, although always kind of a flaw in the back, is his 2-point shot shooting.
Yeah,
is horrible. And
what happened to the floater? Died.
The right-handed floater.
Yeah.
Right. And just in general, what I found telling was how often when he would go hard to the cup, the shot off on a banker on the layup was way too strong.
Yeah.
It was so to the point where it didn't even hit the rim sometimes, hit the backboard. Yep. That's somebody who's afraid their shot's going to get blocked. Gets it off really quickly and hard.
Or the defense is just going to recover over.
That's losing a step.
Yeah.
And so what is crazy, we'll get back to the soft or quiet power. I think Wolves fans would be shocked to know Mike Conley's net rating was pretty fucking good. I mean, not only in the regular season, but in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The Wolves played pretty well when he was on the court. The Wolves were a better team than their opponent when he was on the court. Now, why? How can that be? Because Mike Conley doesn't make stupid mistakes. He gets off the ball when he needs to get off the ball. He gets in the way on defense. If he's not isolated on defense, he's actually a pretty good team defender. He knows when to rotate, how to return off a rotation. He's a smart player. And the three-point shooting, unfortunately, did abandon him, especially in the Thunder series. It abandoned Ant, too, by the way.
Yep.
And so, you know, but there is reason for the way Finch and Conley feel about this. And in summation, I think that he deserves to start. He deserves to get, I would say, 17 to 20 minutes. I don't think you want to play him the 20 to 28 that he played last year. I think you have to concede the fact that that two-pointer off the bounce is more problematic and that switchability is more problematic, which is one of the reasons, frankly, that I'm okay with Dante getting the third of those minutes, because he is a great point of attack defender. He gambles a little too much, but he's a guy who can stand up point guards and isn't afraid to go right at point guards on defense. You know, when they bring the ball up the floor and try to juke him, he'll make the ref think about, is that a foul or not?
Right. Today's show is brought to you by Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. And if it is time for you to buy or sell your home, please do reach out to Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty to help you with that process. All you need to do to contact Adriana is go to thedancingrealtor.com or call or text her at 715-304-9920. If you go to the website, you will find a way to sign up for a free consultation. Get yourself on the right track on the buying or selling process. And the perk we're throwing in is for those of you who do set up one of those free consultations, you will be registered to win some free Wolves tickets from us. I know there's a chunk of you out there that are thinking about purchasing a home. If you're thinking about it, maybe you're procrastinating it. The reality of the situation is you need a realtor to help you get the ball rolling. If this is you, go to thedancingrealtor.com for more information. Or again, feel free to call or text Adriana at 715-304-9920 to book a free strategy session. And like I said, mention this podcast and get entered to win a pair of free Timberwolves tickets when you book your consultation. What I'd like to see change for Mike Conley is, even if it's the same amount of minutes per game, one less stint, longer stints. I think the little 3.5, 4.5, 5 minute shifts that he was playing last year sort of out of the necessity to get DiVincenzo and Nas back in there right away in the game. Cost him some in terms of rhythm.
I agree.
I asked him about that.
He needs a little time to get in a rhythm.
Yeah, so I think, and that might be the case for bringing him off the bench. Though, you know, the other side of that is the Dillingham or DiVincenzo start.
With Rudy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think you get a better Mike Conley if he's playing a couple 7-minute shifts.
I agree.
Or 8,
I think that's a good point. I would even say
like
9 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. And then go rest for
exactly.
a while.
Maybe 2 9-minute stints. Or even like a 9, a 6, and a 3 or something.
Which would often be what DiVincenzo's role was last. Sometimes you get those marathon like 12, 15-minute shifts.
DiVincenzo was famous for the Finch would always say, Tibbs played him 48.
Yeah, right. Like
he can play 15 in a row.
Yeah. And I think I'm part of losing a step too with Mike is maybe not having the same overall stamina. I don't know if it's right or wrong to say that if you repurpose 21 minutes a night into fewer shifts, how that, I don't know exactly how that,
I think that
works, but
I endorse the sentiment. And I think that it is, you know, the more I think about it, it is very much aligned with Rudy. I think they really want to continue to make that duo because Rudy protects him on defense too. And that's
what if Rudy protects Rob? And what if Rob learns how to be the best at throwing lobs to Gobert? You know, I mean, I don't know, but that seems within the realm of possibility.
That'd be nice to have around, you know, for Johan.
We'll talk about him in a second. I do think to wrap the Conley thing, part of this is they have Mike Conley out there as training wheels for Anthony Edwards still.
Yes.
That is a belief that they still need that.
In true fashion, now that Anthony Edwards rides his own bike, he's contemptuous of those training wheels.
Right, sure. But, you know, Finch is calling the shot, or at least was calling the shots of still need training wheels.
Yeah.
You know, still need bumpers.
Yeah. I know.
Still need somebody out there to kind of settle things down when the defense all of a sudden shifts what it's doing or how they're guarding Ant or whatever it might be.
Ant off ball needs to be more of a feature next year, I think, in addition to Ant being more. I would like to see the careening between Ant as point guard and Ant as shooting guard be
coming off pin downs,
more heavily demarcated next year.
I think the point guard themselves, when you're trying to make your top perimeter scorer playoff ball, an important element of that is having the primary initiator be able to give that player the ball off ball.
Exactly.
And I trust
the guy
Mike Conley to do that.
Getting off ball.
Sure. Yeah. But that's its own sort of thing.
Right,
in the context of the point guard position, can Rob do that? Probably. I mean, I think Rob can learn that.
Rob was interested in being two things that Rob was interested in that I thought were attested to his future viability is he wanted to play defense,
right? Even
if he didn't, and he wanted to work with Ant in a give and go kind of way, in a like, all right, we're a tandem out here. Because when Rob got the ball to Ant, Rob moved, you know, and maybe that's just Kentucky. Kentucky, you know, really knows how to.
I mean, I think an idealized version of Rob is a type of point guard that plays in the flow.
Yeah, exactly. And
I don't think he's
keep talking about Rob off ball with Ant. You know, it's one of the things they mentioned with him. And
that's another question of, all right, well, what's the spot up like? We don't know that. Right. I mean, I think Rob can shoot, but like, how much? What's the delta between Dante DiVincenzo spot up 3 and a Rob Dillingham 3, or maybe reverse that, Dillingham but lower and DiVincenzo there, but they believe in Rob Dillingham.
They do.
So you have to believe in these things that we're talking about being like, maybe, you know, and that's going to have to be somewhat thrown in the water and let him swim. And I think that's what's coming this year, at least as I look at the depth chart on July 2nd, that doesn't have another true point guard on the
and
roster.
Again, I think there are certainly worse things in the world than going into a season with Mike Conley, Dante DiVincenzo, and Rob Dillingham as your way to make point guard minutes.
And it's just, again,
I don't think it's a glaring weakness on the team.
I don't think it's glaring, which opens up the conversation as being legitimate to what's a bigger need. point guard or center
Right.
on this team. And part of the reason why you might not say at center is you really like the highlights you've seen of Johan Beringer on YouTube and you believe, oh yeah, maybe at some point or in a pinch, he can have the Luka Garza role. Rudy's out for a few games. He gets in there. He was not drafted to be that. That would have been like draft Kalkbrenner or somebody like that who's ready to plug in right away. They called him on the record, a development project and all those sort of things. But yeah, let's talk about Beringer a little bit.
Well, I mean, I am totally buying in on his upside potential.
Same.
I am very gun shy about penciling him in for anything more than a Dillingham-like role last year, and that even sounds too big to me.
Right.
I just feel like he's 18, 19 years old and hasn't played organized ball for very long. Great instincts, fine. Great footwork, everything fine. Let him go burn up the G League in Iowa for a while and then maybe spot him a little bit. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here because it was the Adriatic League, I mean, they weren't a playoff. I mean, maybe they were a playoff team, but they didn't win it. And it wasn't even Eurobasket necessarily. Or for all I know, Adriatic League is some lower level of Eurobasket, but it wasn't the kind of like Real Madrid or something.
Sure.
And so all the reasons why he is a project are why the Wolves are so excited that they got him where they got him.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree that his upside is a pretty special player. I'll go out on a limb and say that I think his upside in a very different way, but in a same kind of trajectory is like a Jaden McDaniels upside.
Yeah. Well, and it's the idea of athleticism, defensive versatility,
and smart. From what I understand, he's amenable, he's smart, he plays really hard. He's got the mentorship of Rudy in terms of it is kind of comical, but it's not. Rudy does tell people what to eat. I mean, Julius Randle is so funny to hear talk about Rudy, and I'm not eating that, or Ann said I'm not eating that. But I mean, I think that Johan will.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll eat that. And so, and what's crazy is, I mean, Rudy's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Good nutrition is not a bad thing. If everybody can eat junk food when they're a teenager, sure, but if you're not eating junk food as a teenager, you're probably better off.
Right.
So more power to anything that Rudy can help him with. I think we really overemphasized the Rudy-Johan connection simply because we didn't know anything about him on draft night.
True.
And they were both French, and it just seemed like such a easy angle for poor guys on deadline. So
they're very different players,
very
being
different
centers who don't shoot. Yeah.
So much different. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is coordinated, you can tell. And he's smooth. His movements are not robotic at all. In fact, they may be the opposite of robotic. I see him as really a silky athlete.
What I find encouraging and to like play into the, okay, you're in a pinch, Rudy's out for a month and Beringer has to play 12 minutes a night.
Right.
Because you didn't address the big man position any other way. I think there's a world where he can execute different coverages, and you might be getting nothing from him offensively in those 12 minutes a game, and he's just sitting in the dunker spot or whatever. But if you want to just play super aggressive for that 6-minute stint that he's out there, okay, Beringer's coming up and blitzing and recovering and doing all that.
Right.
Or he played a lot of drop too, and is the size. And I mean, I think he's going to, as an 18, 19-year-old, going to be jumpy and, fall for pump fakes and foul guys there and maybe overcommit or process slowly. But that's what's encouraging to me and why I'm just down with the pick overall within the context of he can't shoot, which I mean, not a preference, of a player, is the defensive versatility is either there or will be there in not too long of a time, because his physical skill set allows him to play defense a lot of different ways. So yeah, in a pinch, could maybe that be the answer? Maybe it's just an 18-year-old. It's kind of like Rob last year, right? Of like even more less experience, but the same sort of idea. And knowing Finch and his sort of pattern there, I think we would just get Jade McDaniels at the 4, and Nas at the 5 again. Is how that would
absolutely. But again, to your point, injuries happen, like a rash of injuries happen.
Yeah,
and that's what happened in February, when not only Randle and Rudy, but DDV were out. And so you did have these interesting combinations. And put it this way, losing Luka Garza is a really good thing for this team.
Okay.
Because Luka Garza does not play well in the modern NBA. He just doesn't.
Defense,
He is a pretty good shooter.
You're gonna let that thing fly in Boston, though.
Boston has both Garza and
perfect team for him.
You can tell that they're salary capping, right?
Yeah.
Because again, I've been really high on Josh Minot at times, and I've always respected the fact that everything they say about Luka Garza as a teammate is absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
But it is amazing, just like Mike Conley, because he can't shoot, everybody's really down on Mike Conley when he can't shoot the twos. Because Luka Garza can shoot, everybody is really up on him. I mean, it's like the most basic thing. Can he score the points?
Right.
And
when that's not
if you take away
the
shots from Luka Garza, he's got nothing. In terms of, he's not especially adept rebounder. He's not especially adept screening.
Offensive rebounder, maybe, but yeah. Limited
again. Yeah, and no shade. I know, except for the fact that I do think that the fan base vastly overrated Luka Garza, and I think that not having him here is good for what can be put in his stead, and the fact that it's Johan Beringer is going to be a huge upgrade for a team that is thinking about the future. For 2 years, we've heard, Luka Garza just needs to work on his game. Sooner or later, he'll be a serviceable NBA player. The times have discouraged that perspective.
And a role never opened up either. They still have
a coincidence. Though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but it's, if the theory is right that Luka Garza, after a couple of years, would be able to be an NBA player. Well, no, he would have been on a different team, which he's done. Right, I mean, and it's still to be determined.
The market,
because it was Nas, Cat, and Rudy,
right?
And then it was Nas, Julius, and Rudy. That's a pretty big blockade. Which maybe should just
Nate Knight today.
Yeah, Nate Knight. I talked about him yesterday too. You want to just like around the NBA a little bit?
Yeah, because this is after all this talk about continuity and the Wolves and kind of buying into, quite frankly, being demonstrating some good faith toward both Conley and Finch, who I think both deserve it. I'll now turn around and say the West is brutal and it's going to be tough. And it was brutal last year. It was brutal the year before. But what, Denver has done, what Memphis has done, Dallas, obviously, Cooper Flag is a huge feather.
Don't forget Houston.
Houston, that's right. Houston, I mean, I'm really glad they didn't get Durant here. He went to the right place. That is exactly where he belongs. The fact that he's going to a team that is losing Jalen Green at the same time is perfect symmetry. It was a great trade for them in that respect. The fact that they've gone out and gotten other people now that are really strengthening this team in other ways. They've been really sharp in free agent, and getting Capella back, that's kind of cool, because then you got Sengun and Capella, two very, very different smallish, centers, and then you have Adams. I mean,
I don't know how that's all going to work out, like all three of them, but yeah.
Well, I mean, and Udoka's, they still got Tara Eason.
Yeah.
They got guys who are hounds on the ball. It's just Amen is going to get so much better.
Yeah.
They're going to be a really good team. And I fully expect the Thunder and the Rockets to be the top two teams in the West.
So how we talked about it yesterday was tier 1 OKC, and then tier 2 Houston, Denver, and Minnesota. Maybe with the Wolves being the third of those three. I mean, yeah.
That's what I think, yeah. I mean, I would put, again, Denver's another team that just, well,
I want to talk about Denver. Let's talk about Denver, yeah, because we didn't get into that yesterday. Like,
Bruce
that's
Brown coming back is just amazing.
Tim Hardaway Jr. yesterday, too.
Tim Hardaway, exactly.
Stewart, I mean,
they just got, they're filling some really cool roles.
Big old JV for the non-Jokic minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah, man.
Because that's exactly what he is at this point in his career.
Mm-hmm.
A very good backup center.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy who can hit a three, that you can run the same sets.
They just need to be able to not be trash when Jokic is off the floor.
And, getting back Bruce Brown is huge for that.
Yeah, because now you could do like Valanciunas,
you got
Gordon,
Watson,
Brown, Hardaway.
JV.
Yeah, Murray could be out there too with that second group.
You can rest Aaron Gordon. You lose Porter and you bring Cam Johnson in. That's a net plus. I mean, Porter always was somebody who had flashes. Porter's flashes are all-star.
Sure.
But
he's got a higher ceiling than Cam, like that he can get to. He doesn't get to it often enough to
the reliability factor for Denver is what really matters now. And they got a bunch of reliable people.
And Porter is making 38 this year, and Johnson's making 21.
That's huge.
So that it literally freed up the ability to do all the rest of this stuff. That 17 in luxury tax, apron space, whatever, allows them to go out and take on Valanciunas, which that was also just straight up for Dario Saric. Like what are the Kings? I don't know.
Did you see Hollinger's take on that? I mean, he just went crazy. I mean, it was the biggest heist of the free agency. It was ridiculous.
It's just Sacramento always does that, where they go, "Oh, we don't care about this move as long as it gets us $5 more million in cap space, so we can get Dennis Schroeder." Like whatever. I mean, there's
Schroeder
so many
is like
moves that. Yeah.
Dennis Schroeder. I would love to see his salary cap sheet. I mean, he's been paid glorious amounts of money. He's been paid next to nothing.
So many different teams. This is his fourth team in 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, he's probably almost in double digits in terms of teams.
Today's show was brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. We know there are a chunk of you out there who have a home improvement project that you need to get done before the fall. Get it done this summer. We would love it if you got it done with Your Home Improvement Company. Right now, they're still offering buy 2 windows, get 2 windows free deal. The windows come with a lifetime warranty, and they are installed by certified professionals. Your Home Improvement Company also specializes in transforming bathrooms. Maybe if they're outdated, 30% off deal on bathroom remodels as well. Anything around the home, if you need it to get taken care of, a home improvement project that you don't want to do yourself, do contact Your Home Improvement Company and know that their renovations are done by certified local professionals and backed by a lifetime warranty. Whatever the project is, Your Home Improvement Company offers great financing deals that requires 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2026. Contact Your Home Improvement Company by calling 866-777-YHIC or by going to yourhomeimprovement.co.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Yeah, that was just a weird. I mean, he's 32 years old and he signed a 3-year deal for above the mid-level.
And one of those guys that is internationally play Hall of Famer.
Oh, he was nasty for Germany. I loved him. I mean,
He's
I'm
incredible.
like, I like Schroeder the player, but I like Schroeder the player as in the like, okay, you add him onto Detroit in the middle of the season and he figures out your backup point guard minutes.
Exactly.
I think they signed him to be the starter for the next 3 years when he's 32, 33, 34. I mean, yeah, I don't, whatever.
Right. And then he owes his penchant for trying to get under people's skin by,
Yeah. Who did he hit? Mike Conley, and then Jaden came over and popped him. Yeah.
And he and Jeff Teague hated each other openly as competing point guards for Atlanta way back when he was a rookie. I mean, the guy is a pest, and he's also really good sometimes, and then his shtick doesn't work sometimes.
All right.
Classic Sacramento guy.
I know. Well, it's just.
I mean, I hate the carp on the Kings, but.
Well, we're just back to dumb teams again.
I mean, DeMar DeRozan. I mean,
Zach LaVine, your boy, your boy Zach LaVine over there, $45 million.
Incredible, just incredible. I mean, and New Orleans. I mean, one of the things I will say is that there's going to be a bigger bifurcation. I actually like what Portland has done. I think they'll rise, but I think New Orleans, Sacramento, and Utah, even though it's a little bit coming up, those three teams.
Well, and the bigger problem is like the stupidity of New Orleans and Sacramento has a cost or a value to somebody else. And now here, okay, the Hawks, nasty offseason, plus you might get one of the top picks in the draft next year because I mean, dude, that
and the Hawks had fleeced New Orleans the year before by getting Dyson Daniels.
That's true. Yes. So it's like now the Hawks are going to be probably a home court playoff team next year.
I think they are.
Yeah,
the Hawks are really looking really good.
But it's with Denver, that allows them to get Valanciunas,
right?
Which kind of solves what their biggest issue was.
I agree.
Backup five
and Bruce Brown.
Yeah.
I repeat, there's something about imagine like Slow-Mo coming back. Tell me Slow-Mo would be a better player on the Wolves next year than he will be anywhere else.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know, I mean, some teams just, a player and an organization just sink.
Right.
And, as an SYNC.
Yeah.
And I really think that Bruce Brown in Denver is a match made. That's tremendous.
Anything else around the league?
It's kind of sad to see the Celtics, I don't know. I mean, let's say the power of the Achilles. I mean, holy shit. It's killed 3 franchises that were all really good.
I know.
I mean, Boston, Milwaukee, and Indiana are all shadows of themselves because of an Achilles injury.
It's scary.
And, it's kind of like, it's funny how injuries cycle through. It used to be, an ACL, or whatever. And like in pitching, it used to be Tommy John. Now it's like the shoulder and, it's all these weird things. But now it's the time of the Achilles, and it seems to be the time of the Achilles in the playoffs.
I know.
Which really, I mean, I think I said this the last time we were together, but it's weird that it must have something to do with like pushing your body literally beyond its capability, and the Achilles being one of those parts of your body that your mind can snap if it tries too hard.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I can see it.
Yeah. Just the overall pace of the game is up in the NBA, the amount of possessions, the amount of, and
the amount of thrust from a standing position, it seems to be one of the things that does it.
Yeah, it's like when baseball players always pull their hamstring like out of the box.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
going
like
first to third.
Yeah. It's just stopping into sprinting right away.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's
that torque on the body, and that obviously the Achilles, it just has
blame AAU and some of that stuff.
Torque,
but the reality of the situation is, 3 of the best teams in the Eastern Conference are not only are destroyed by that injury, but then kind of tore it down because of that injury.
Right.
And I guess Milwaukee is flailing and trying to not.
It is a weird thing. I mean, I was watching NBA Tonight the other couple of nights ago, and Mark Hayes, I think, is the intel guy for them. Isn't that his name?
Mark Hayes?
Yeah, maybe not.
For
I'm
ESPN?
bad at names.
Shams?
No. Sean, no.
Mark Spears.
No, it wasn't. It was- anyway, whoever it
John
was
Rand.
said Giannis wasn't happy with the
Chris Haynes.
Chris Haynes. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's also like best friends with Damian Lillard, and I think he's a Portland guy. And
Okay.
I don't.
You don't think it's credible?
Well, I don't think it can be true.
Well, I know that Greg Anthony basically shined it on and basically continued to spiel that it wasn't a bad thing. But put it this way, if Giannis is disappointed,
how can Giannis be disappointed about letting Damian Lillard go and excited about Miles Turner coming? Those reports both happened.
Yeah.
Those cannot both happen at the same time. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Giannis
unless he
doesn't get
unrealistically wants them both.
Yeah, but I guess.
I know.
And that's
Right.
part of the problem we're dealing with this whole world of
put
this.
it this way. I actually, as somebody who predicted Milwaukee would win the East over the Celtics right after that trade was made, because I thought
2 years ago. Yeah.
I thought Giannis and Dame was a absolutely beautiful fit. And I was totally wrong about that. And that was proven over and over again, regardless of the coach, that poor guy that got scapegoated for that. Adrian Griffin, was it? Or
that might have been a little his fault, but he was scapegoated. It didn't last long.
If it was his fault, then
the flag there was Terry
for 2 years doing it.
Yeah, but Terry Stotts was assigned to be the associate head coach of that team, and he quit before that season started.
True.
And
but Doc Rivers didn't fix it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, Milwaukee and aggressive moves, and you get Miles Turner and you replace Brook Lopez, you're going to lose, whatever.
Right.
That's why I say it's flailing. I mean, in that they're still trying. You just do get limited when you make. I mean, Milwaukee hasn't hit on a draft pick in forever. They've made relatively all-in desperate signings, trades
for Middleton. I mean, that was I get that Chris Middleton has been injury prone and it's affected him, and he's not what he used to be. And that Kuzma had a better than I expected season, but Kuzma's never been able to play defense.
He was terrible.
I mean, and Portis, I think, is this rock solid guy. I think that was a good signing. But Portis, Turner, Giannis, that's a really nice front, trio.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I don't know. I mean, they're not a team. I think Atlanta is a better team right now than Milwaukee is.
Right.
And, and then, you kind of look around. Cleveland got better, I think, with their deal they made, or their signing. No, it was a trade.
They lost Jerome. What did
Cleveland got?
Am I blanking on this? They lost LeVert to Detroit. Or no, he was already gone to Atlanta at the deadline.
No, Cleveland got somebody good, though.
Why am I blanking on that? No, you gave me this little page here. Cleveland re-signed Sam Merrill. Oh, and Lonzo Ball. They traded for Lonzo Ball for Isaac McCall. There we go. That's what I was forgetting about. That was a couple days ago. All blurs.
Which I think is a really good pickup for them.
I like Larry Nance Jr. too.
Yeah, exactly.
He'd be the perfect third center guy for the Wolves that we were talking about there.
That's right. But also a guy that had really a good success, pretty good run in Cleveland, and knows their system.
He turned into a Plumlee.
Yeah, he did.
He lost his athleticism. Now he just pivots around.
Plumlee to boot.
That's true. No, this is gonna. I mean, we're still all putting the pieces together. I think.
NBA. I mean, it's a dynamic league. That's the thing. I mean, to me, it's the most of all the four major sports. It's the one that I understand how football has the parity, and I understand, baseball is so salary driven because of no salary cap and stuff, and hockey is trying to be like basketball. But basketball, to me, given the number of people on the court and how five, you can make additions and subtractions that are big. And I really do like, there's a piece I really want to recommend in the Atlantic. I think I tweeted it out on Blue Sky.
Athletic.
Yeah. Did I say the Atlantic?
Yeah, probably in that too.
Blue Sky. Yeah. But it was, we need to start looking at salaries as percentage of salary cap, because numbers really, and as a result, players are beginning to look at things that way too and begin to say, all right, I'm not getting as much, but at what point do I want to bet on myself to make 35 when I'm going to make 26?
Right.
And I think it was a really good insight. I know a lot of the cap people, people who are really inside on this do look at percentages a lot more, but the semi-casual fan who knows the parameters of the salary cap, but not the specifics. They used Randle as an example. I mean, Randle's salary, his first year, Randle's salary now would have made him like one of the highest paid players in the NBA when he started his career.
Sure.
And so,
well, there's even different constructions of contracts too. Like I mentioned Jakob Poeltl earlier, and the deal he's now on is 5 years, $124 million, which is the same as Nas, right?
Right.
But Nas is 125. But how Poeltl's worked is he's making $19.5 million this year, and then he has a $19.5 million player option for 26, 27. He opted into that player option and then added on 3 years and $85 million after it. So that's not the same contract Nas Reid is on.
No,
and I mean, he's going to make 19.5 a whole season from now when Nas is going to be at 23.5 or whatever, so it's all it does. And Shams is doing the thing where he's getting this from agents and he's rounding up and he's including incentives and stuff like that. And you're right. It is, given how meticulous teams need to be navigating these aprons and stuff like that. You're like, $4.5 million. Well, imagine if the Wolves had $4.5 million more right now. That's a very different calculation, to be able to to work with there. So I think that's a good thing. I don't know what article you're referencing.
And it kind of basically gets to the idea that we were wondering what would happen to these guys who got quote unquote screwed because they're not superstars getting the max and they're not scrubs now. They deserve to get paid. But that's kind of an overreaction. They are getting paid. I mean, the level and the cap is going to go up. It's really hard to envision. Given
it's not going up by the 10% next year, but 7%. That's still up. That's still like a big jump compared to 10 years ago. Yeah.
If you get a 7% raise on your salary, you have a good year coming. And the league has that. And so, and the TV contracts and the value of franchises, all these things are skyrocketing.
Right.
And the players are going to get the nature of the salary cap. The players are going to get a chunk of that.
Right.
And there's the point of the article was, unless you want to say compared to so-and-so, the whole Stephen Marbury when KG got the max.
Sure.
And then they cut off that way of doing it and he left the team out of spite and missed the opportunity to play basketball with Kevin Garnett.
Right.
Blew his career, in my opinion. But if you're looking at how you fare compared to somebody else rather than how you fare in terms of your life, how you're set up. And that's what I like about both what Nas, to bring this podcast full circle, what Nas and Randle both did is they looked at how does this benefit my life? Do I like where I am? Is that a fair amount of money? Should I be happy about this? I'm happy.
Right. And the Wolves didn't squeeze them.
Exactly.
Because like Indiana squeezed Miles Turner.
Exactly.
And then Miles Turner's agent was forced to be like, canvass the league and convince Milwaukee to do some crazy shit to waive and stretch Damian Lillard, and that's what, if Julius Randle wanted to leave, something crazy like that would have had to happen.
Right.
And when we're talking about $30 million,
Exactly.
That, or it would have had to been Brooklyn, and more teams have proven to show spending power this offseason than maybe when you and I got on. There's only one team that has cap space. There's been some loopholes to be found there, but overall the market was, I think you called it last week, a boa constrictor, and it still is, and forced players who were free agents to either opt in to the player options that they have, like Nas or Julius, or kind of convinced their general manager to operate under goodwill. And Tim Conley did that with both Naz Reid and Julius Randle. And it's an interesting element of it.
And it was a correct calculation unless you believe that they should have stepped up and given that money and let Randle walk. Or Naz. But I mean, the idea of signing all three was always kind of specious, but it became impossible once you saw what the market was for Nah.
Yeah, for Nah. And
the guy does, you and I both know he's a $16 million player, $18 million player.
Sure.
You know, and so, and the playoffs just validated that, you know.
He was up and down in the playoffs, but
no, I meant the tenor of what kind of player you need to go deep.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I do. Definitely co-sign it. I think too, man, part of this with the CBA and the second apron and stuff like that is this is the second year of it. And I think agents kind of are learn how it works. And
there's going to be more money next year.
Yeah, like Tyus Jones's agent probably would have figured out a better way for him to not need to take a minimum contract a season ago if he had reps in this CBA to be able to do it. It's like Conley was talking about with the second round of the draft. And it's all got, agent
Everybody
driven,
had agents, right.
Because they knew how it worked. Oh, it's a 2-day draft now. We can mess with stuff in between,
Yeah, that's where it used to be the absence of a slot was a good thing.
Yeah, right.
Now it's not.
No, yeah. All right, man. This was good. For listeners, like I said, I'm heading out of town for 4th of July. It does seem like the Wolves roster is pretty well in place. Maybe some sort of signing could happen over the weekend. If that happens, we'll get to it. And I think even if something crazy goes down and the Wolves make a trade, which you can never rule that out either, we'll get to that on Monday. But appreciate you coming in and doing this, man. All right, so and probably until next Monday with Kyle. He's Britt. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.